Do you know how medieval knight armor was made? If you don't know, please watch this video with me. Original armor material and shape. Throughout the Middle Ages, warfare played a central role in shaping the political and social landscape of Europe. As kingdoms clashed and feudal lords defended their territories, the knight emerged as a key figure of bravery in battle. But a knight's effectiveness on the battlefield did not come solely from his sword. It relied heavily on the sophisticated protective gear crafted to protect him in battle. This armor, especially in the late Middle Ages, represented one of the most advanced technological and artistic feats of its time. It was a marvel of engineering, metallurgy, and craftsmanship, the culmination of centuries of innovation and labor. The origins of medieval knightly armor can be traced back to simple materials and crude designs. Early armor was made from the basic resources available in the medieval world: iron, steel, leather, and cloth. Over time, as knowledge developed and warfare became more sophisticated, so did the methods and materials used to protect knights in battle. Iron and steel, the foundation of protection. Initially, iron was the dominant metal in armor making. Medieval blacksmiths worked with wrought iron, a malleable but not particularly durable material. Wrought iron was adequate in the early development of armor, especially when used in small pieces, such as rings or scales. However, it had its limitations. It could bend under heavy blows and did not always provide optimal protection against sharp or more powerful weapons. With the advancement of metallurgy, blacksmiths began to use steel, an alloy of iron and carbon. Steel offered significant advantages in strength and hardness. Steel could be worked more precisely, shaped more intricately, and most importantly, it could be hardened through a process called tempering. This process involved heating the metal to a specific temperature and then rapidly cooling it, usually in water or oil. This rapid cooling increased the hardness of the metal. Later, blacksmiths also developed tempering techniques that allowed the steel to retain its ductility, preventing it from becoming too brittle. The best blacksmiths, especially those in regions like Milan or Nuremberg, perfected these techniques to create steel plates that were both resilient and slightly elastic, allowing them to absorb and deflect blows. Leather and fabric, inner protective layer. While metal forms the outer barrier against weapons, softer materials like leather and cloth provide comfort and absorb the force of impact on the inside. Leather is used in many forms: tanned for flexibility, boiled, also known as cuir bouilli, for hardness and shape retention, or even hardened through soaking and baking to form a semi-hard surface. It serves many functions, from mounting plates to serving as a base for scale armor or as a plate covering. Cloth, usually linen or wool, played an important role inside the armor. It formed the padding worn underneath the outer metal. The most common form of this was the gambeson, a thick quilted jacket that not only protected the body from impact, but also prevented scratches from the metal. Some knights wore multiple layers: a padded gambeson, followed by chainmail, and then plate, making the whole outfit incredibly heavy, but also incredibly protective. The evolution of early armor, from vest to plate armor. Before the advent of full-body armor in the 14th and 15th centuries, earlier generations of knights relied primarily on chainmail, or mail, for protection. Chainmail was an ingenious construction made up of thousands of small, interconnected rings, often made from drawn metal wire. Creating the mail was one of the most labor-intensive tasks in medieval armor making. Each ring had to be individually shaped, cut, and then welded or riveted to ensure the armor would not come apart under pressure. Mail had the advantage of being flexible, conforming to the contours of the body, and allowing for relative freedom of movement. It provided excellent protection against slashing attacks and could disperse the force of a blow over a wider area. However, it was less effective against blunt trauma or penetrating attacks from weapons such as arrows or spears. As a result, knights often wore padded undergarments or combined mail with other types of armor. Scale armor appeared as a transitional form between breastplate and plate armor. It consisted of small metal scales, shaped like fish or lizard scales, attached to a lining of leather or thick cloth. The scales overlapped and were sewn or nailed in place, providing protection similar to breastplate, but with greater strength. Scale armor was commonly used in eastern parts of Europe and the Byzantine Empire, and was sometimes used by Western knights during the Crusades. Another intermediate form was plate armor. This involved attaching larger metal plates to the inside of a cloth or leather garment. These plates were either stacked or arranged to cover major parts of the torso. Although not as portable as mail, plate armor provided superior protection against the increasingly dangerous weapons used in later medieval warfare, such as warhammers and crossbows. The evolution towards full body armor was gradual. Knights and armorers gradually adapted new materials and techniques, combining different elements to improve protection without sacrificing mobility. Each improvement was a response to changing battlefield tactics, weapon technology, and even the knight's social status. By the time full body armor became prominent, it was the result of centuries of experimentation, adaptation, and refinement. But before it reached that pinnacle, the medieval world had already built a solid foundation of protective gear from a mixture of metal, leather, and fabric, a layered defense system that was both functional and symbolic. Wearing armor wasn't just a matter of survival, it was also a visual statement of a knight's identity, rank, and craft. As the medieval world moved into the Middle Ages and late Middle Ages, warfare became increasingly brutal and technologically advanced. Weapons such as longbows, crossbows, and long-handled weapons made earlier forms of armor, such as chainmail and scale armor, less effective. In response, armorers across Europe began to turn to full plate armor, the most iconic and sophisticated form of knightly protection. Creating a complete suit of plate armor was a laborious and highly specialized process. It required not only expert knowledge of the properties of metals, but also the coordination of many craftsmen. From smelting the ore to nailing the final plates together, every step in the process was crucial to ensuring that the armor could withstand the rigors of battle while still allowing the knight freedom of movement. Forging, the forming of steel into shape. The first important step in creating armor is forging the steel. This begins by heating ingots of iron or steel in a forge until they glow red or orange, usually at temperatures between 1000 and 1200 degrees Celsius. At this temperature, the metal becomes malleable, allowing the blacksmith to hammer it into rough shapes. Forging requires a great deal of physical strength and endurance. Using heavy sledgehammers, blacksmiths pound hot metal onto anvils and metal sledges to begin shaping them into plates and curved shapes. Specialized anvils and tools are used to shape specific parts of armor. Domed sledges for breastplates, curved dies for helmets, and angled anvils for more angular segments. This is not a crude process, quite the opposite. Skilled blacksmiths have a deep, intuitive understanding of how metal moves under force. They must strike a balance between striking hard enough to shape the steel, but not so hard that it cracks or thins too much. Forging is the beginning of the transformation of armor from raw material to life-saving exoskeleton. Forming, fitting the armor to the body. Once the steel was forged into plates of the appropriate size and thickness, the next stage involved shaping the armor to fit the contours of the human body. An important requirement for good plate armor was that it should fit well and be articulated, providing all-around protection while allowing the knight to move effectively in battle. To achieve this, blacksmiths use hammers of various sizes and shapes, round-faced hammers, cross hammers, and planing hammers, along with stakes and molds. The metal sheets are carefully bent and curved to mimic human anatomy. This includes creating a convex breastplate to block blows, knurled sections for strength, and overlapping joints that allow for movement at the shoulders, elbows, hips, and knees. One notable feature of plate armor was its ability to be customized. Unlike mail armor, which came in more standard sizes, plate armor had to be tailored to the wearer's exact measurements. This often involved measuring and making trial pieces. Wealthier knights would commission complete suits that were precisely tailored to their bodies, often requiring multiple sewing sessions. The result was armor that fit like a second skin, designed to deflect, absorb, and withstand damage from a wide variety of medieval weapons. Tempering, making steel harder. Once shaped, the steel plates need to be hardened, and this is achieved through the process of tempering. This important metallurgical process can make the difference between armor bending under a heavy blow and armor that breaks completely. Tempering involves heating the shaped metal to a high temperature and then rapidly cooling it, a process called tempering. The quenching medium can be water, brine, or oil, depending on the desired effect the blacksmith desires. Rapid quenching changes the crystalline structure of the steel, increasing its hardness. However, steel that is too hard will become brittle. So blacksmiths often reheat the steel at a slightly lower temperature afterward to restore some of its ductility. This two-step process creates a balance between hardness and toughness. Experienced blacksmiths can judge the temperature by eye, based on the color of the heated steel, a skill developed over years of trial and error. Tempering also varies, depending on where the steel is located. Helmets and breastplates, for example, need to be especially hard, while joints and flexible areas need to be more pliable so they can move without cracking. Articulation and assembly make the armor move. Perhaps the most technically demanding part of the armor manufacturing process is assembly. A complete suit of armor can consist of over 100 individual pieces, each of which must be precisely assembled and connected to ensure both protection and range of motion. Articulation involves creating moving parts at the major joints: shoulders, pauldrons, elbows, coudes, knees, polions, and hips, cuisses. They are usually constructed with overlapping plates, attached by rivets and leather straps. Some areas use sliding rivets or internal leather straps that allow the plates to move parallel to the body. To protect the hands, gloves were made with overlapping finger plates, a feat of miniature engineering that required hours of delicate work. Likewise, sabatons, leg armor, were made to flex around the ankles and feet, often using a series of ridged plates or hinges. Each piece had to be tested for range of motion and durability. The inside of a body armor usually has leather straps, buckles, and padding, allowing it to be tightened to the body. Padded lining is sewn or attached to the inside of chest armor and helmets to absorb shock, improve comfort, and prevent abrasions. Without this internal padding, even a minor blow could result in a bruise or a serious concussion. Finishing, strength combined with aesthetics. Once all the parts are assembled, the armor undergoes a final finishing process. This process serves both functional and aesthetic purposes. The armor will file and sand the metal to smooth out any sharp edges, burrs, or irregularities. The surface may then be polished to a high shine, not just for vanity, but because a smooth surface will better deflect weapons. Some armor was chemically treated to prevent rusting, dyed blue or black. Elite clients could request engravings or embossing of designs, family crests, religious symbols, or gilded trim. Armor was often a status symbol as well as a tool of war. The more elaborate the decorations, the more wealthy and prestigious the knight. By the end of the assembly and finishing stages, a well-crafted suit of plate armor can take weeks or even months to complete. It is a combination of engineering and art, metal and leather, protection and mobility, a masterpiece created by many hands. By the time full-body armor reached its peak in the 15th and early 16th centuries, it was not just a piece of battlefield equipment, but also the pinnacle of artistic, technological, and social endeavor. Producing such a complex and useful piece of engineering required the collaboration of many artisans, many hours of skilled labor, and a significant financial investment. The knight's armor was no longer a simple tool of war. It had become a luxury item, a statement of status, a cultural artifact, and a symbol of chivalry. Division of labor, a guild of craftsmen. The complexity of plate armor making meant that no single individual could master every step of the process. Although early armorers could do much of the work themselves, by the late Middle Ages armor production was carried out in organized workshops, often part of urban guild systems in major cities, such as Milan, Augsburg, or Nuremberg. Each workshop has a clear hierarchical structure and division of labor. Tasks are assigned based on specialization. Blacksmiths. These craftsmen specialize in heating, hammering, and shaping raw metal into usable sheets of metal. Shapers and assemblers. Once the basic shapes are forged, shapers refine the curves, bends, and structural contours of each part to fit the human body's anatomy. Steel quenchers. These craftsmen focus on the important task of hardening and tempering steel, ensuring that each sheet of steel has the correct balance of strength and ductility. Polishing machine. After assembly, the polisher uses abrasives to refine the metal surface. Some also apply chemical treatments or greening to prevent rust. Engravers and decorators. For armor commissioned by the nobility, these highly skilled artisans would add decorative details, such as engraving, embossing, and sometimes gold or silver leaf. Leatherworkers and tailors. These craftsmen create inner padding, leather straps, and linen linings. They also fit and attach leather straps, buckles, and fasteners to make wearable armor. This assembly line structure meant that workshops could scale production and serve a wide range of customers. Some even exported their goods to Europe. Milanese armor, for example, was so renowned for its quality that it became a staple of many royal courts. German armorers were particularly admired for their knurled designs and Gothic aesthetics, which combined functionality with unmistakable sophistication. Time and cost. Armor is a noble investment. Crafting a complete suit of armor is time-consuming and expensive. A complete suit of high-quality armor, as it is sometimes called, can take anywhere from several weeks to several months to complete, depending on the complexity, decoration, and urgency of the task. If the armor is custom-made, that time can increase even more, with many assembly and adjustment steps required. In terms of cost, plate armor was extremely expensive for ordinary soldiers. A well-made suit could cost the equivalent of years' wages for a laborer or even a small landowner. For this reason, full plate armor was almost exclusively reserved for wealthy nobles, elite knights, and royalty. Lower-ranking soldiers could wear partial armor, repurposed pieces, or older styles, such as chain mail and padded cloth. Some kings and nobles even maintained personal armories, with multiple suits for different purposes: combat, tournament, and ceremonial use. Tournament armor was typically heavier and more protective, as there was a risk of blunt force injury. while ceremonial armor was ornate and intended to be impressive rather than functional. To keep costs down, some knights inherited armor over generations, repairing and upgrading it over time. Others bought second-hand suits or had several made to protect only the most vulnerable areas, the chest, head, and limbs, depending on their budget and needs. Economic investment in armor extended beyond the armorers themselves, supporting industries, iron mines, coal mines, tanneries, textile workers, all played a role in the armor economy. This network of connections highlights how deeply embedded armor production was in the broader structure of medieval European society. If you find the videos interesting and meaningful, please give me a like and subscribe to follow the latest videos. Thank you.